Hey, mamas, and welcome back to the Knit Your Stress Away podcast, the podcast all around knitting for beginners, especially, and for busy mamas who are trying to find a creative outlet in their lives. I'm Nadine Medina. I'm your host here on the podcast. And today we are going to talk about a problem that you may be running into as you're first starting to knit. You might still have this issue as you progress in your knitting journey, but I do know that this is something that somebody who's new to it definitely deals with, and that is feeling a little bit of pain in your hands, your fingers, and your wrists. So today in this Knit and Tell Friday, I'm going to walk you through a few stretches that you can easily incorporate into your new knitting routine. Let's dive in. Welcome to Knit Your Stress Away. Are you a mom who feels overwhelmed, craving a creative outlet, but unsure where to start or how to fit it into your already packed day? I have dedicated this podcast to help you discover practical, guilt-free self-care strategies through the calming practice of knitting. I'll help you break free from the overwhelm, quiet the noise and comparison of social media, empowering you to pick up your knitting needles instead and embrace moments of rest, creativity, and mindfulness. Hi, I'm Nadine, a mom, wife, and passionate knitter. I first learned to knit as a teenager from my grandmother back in Germany, but for some reason, I put my needles down in my 20s. It wasn't until 2020, when everyone was searching for ways to ease the anxiety of the unknown, that I picked knitting back up, and something amazing happened. I found peace and joy in the cozy, calming rhythm of knitting, and now I'm so excited to share my practical tips and habits with you so you can reclaim your time, recharge, and rediscover the things that bring you happiness. It's time to ditch the endless scroll on social media and focus on what truly matters, your well-being. So if you're ready to take control of your stress, ditch overwhelm and social media comparison, rekindle your creativity, and recharge with a hobby you love, this podcast will guide you every step of the way. Take a deep breath, grab your knitting needles, and let's start creating a life with less stress and more joy, one stitch at a time. All right, welcome back to the podcast and happy Friday. If you're listening to this podcast episode as it airs, it's a Knit and Tell Friday, which means it's a knitting tip and just a little bit behind the scenes on what I'm currently working on. And I might even talk to you about the book that I'm reading. So let's get into the stretches first. This is actually something that I've been meaning to talk to on this podcast for quite a while, because I know it is definitely something that you deal with, especially as a beginner. And it came back to my mind recently when I was working on a beanie, and I used a circular needle, but it was a pretty short one because of, the circumference of the beanie is really kind of small. So the actual circular, like the band that the needles are connected, or the wire that they're connected with, is relatively short, which also then makes the actual knitting needle, so the metal part of the needles, a little bit shorter than a regular needle would be. And while that's not a problem, but it can really put a little bit more of it's just a different movement, I guess, when you're knitting and when the needle is not as long. So it's not laying all the way to the end of your hand against your hand. It's a little bit shorter, and it just has a different kind of movement. And I was feeling my hands were, almost like I worked them out. Like you feel after you do a workout and you can feel your muscles. It's not pain, but it's just sore, right? So I was doing my stretches that I often do just without even thinking about it, but I figured this would be a really cool thing to talk about on the podcast. This is an episode that you might want to save or come back to and just jot down really quickly the stretches so that you remember what they are. You can also share this somewhere to easily find it again. If you want to, share it on your Instagram stories and save it, that's another way to do it. So let's get into this, because this is supposed to be a short episode and I want to stick to that. But also you can, if you're not walking, if you're walking, you can totally do this along. If you're driving, maybe not so much. So depending on what you're doing, go ahead and just do the stretches with me. I'm definitely going to do them as I'm talking about them. So stretch number 1 is the finger spread. So what this means is you're just going to it's like very simple. Spread your fingers out as wide as you can. So you're trying to stretch them away from each other as much as possible. And then you're going to hold that for about 10 seconds and then relax them again. And the moment you relax them, you can really feel that tension in your hands releasing. It's almost like if you've heard about progressive muscle relaxation, where you kind of, clench your muscles for a little bit and then you let go. And that creates even more of a relaxation effect than just trying to say, oh, okay, now relax your muscles. So we're putting a little bit of tension on them by stretching all your 10 fingers out far away from each other and then slowly let go. You can do this with both hands because you're using different muscle movement on each hand when you knit. So your left hand is not doing the same thing as your right hand, but nonetheless, this is really beneficial for both hands. Now, this one you can do just a few times. You'll know when it feels like, okay, I think I've done enough of these. Plus, we have 3 more stretches. So, you want to save some time to actually be able to do all 4 of them. So the second stretch are just simple wrist circles. Those you may actually already be doing kind of on your own whenever you're feeling like, okay, my hands are feeling a little stiff or a little, painful from this knitting. Super simple. So you hold your hands out in front of you and then you just make slow circles with your wrists. So let's go in one direction first. I usually go outside. So in other words, my hands turn towards the left and the right, like just to the outside of my body. And then we just go, 10 times maybe, or 10 seconds each way. And then you just do the other direction and you turn them inwards. It just feels so good. Like I'm literally doing it right now and it feels amazing. And this is just a great way to keep the wrists flexible. And especially also for people, if you're new to knitting, this is a great one to kind of just loosen everything up again. But also if you're knitting on a project and you're doing it for a long time, or like I said, my very small needles, where I'm kind of almost feeling like I'm clenching my fists, while I'm knitting, this is a really great stretch to get everything loosened up again, and it'll feel really good. You can also kind of wave your fingers up and down as you do this, which it kind of adds a little bit more of a stretch. So this one felt really great. And then this is actually my favorite, the next one, where you just stretch your entire wrist. So for this one, you're going to hold one arm out straight in front of you with your palm facing up. You don't have to, lock your elbow. You can leave it just a little bit bent. And then with your other hand, you gently pull your fingers back towards you. So in other words, you're pulling them slightly down until you feel the stretch along your wrist and your forearm. So now you're going to hold this also for 10 to 15 seconds, and then you switch to the other hand. This one feels amazing. I literally do this almost every day just because it feels so good. But I also do work out and I lift weights. So when you do bicep curls, these also feel really great. So I'm going to do my left one just because it feels so good while I'm doing this. You're welcome to join me as you listen to the episode. Like I said, if not, just save this episode for later and do it then. And here's a little bonus that I always do as well. I flip my palm around and do the same thing the other way. So once again, you just hold your hand out straight, but this time you don't face your palm up, you face it down, and then you just take your other hand, use it to pull your fingers down and enjoy the stretch on the top of your hand going through your wrist and then over across your forearm. It's so good. So again, count for about 10 to 15 seconds. Don't forget to breathe when you stretch. That's always important, no matter what you stretch. Breathing, not holding your breath. Okay, now we're done with that one. Gosh, that felt good. Love that one. And here's the last one, the fist clenches. And this is similar to the first one, where the first one we just stretched out our fingers, but this one you're actually going to make a fist with both hands and really kind of tense up those muscles in your hands. And then slowly open your hand and stretching the fingers out wide. So you just do this a few times. It gets the blood flowing and It can also keep your hands from cramping if that's something that you're dealing with as you knit, which again, in the beginning, it can happen only because you're just not used to the movement that you're doing with your needles. But even when you're in the middle of knitting, you can drop your project really quickly and just kind of open and close your hands a couple of times and clench your fists and open them up again and wiggle your fingers. It's a great and easy stretch that you can just do literally while you're knitting. All of these feel super awesome. Gosh, this feels great. It's funny how I never do them consciously. They just happen unconsciously. So doing them consciously like this is even better. And there you have it. Those are the super simple stretches that I wanted to pass on today in case you're feeling like you've knitted a little too much or you're working out for the first time with your hands. That might be how that feels. None of these take long, but they can make a huge difference in how your hands and wrists feel, especially, when you're first starting out or after a long knitting session. So don't skip this. You can do this every day. You can do this after or before you knit. I would just definitely say keep that in your back pocket. So be sure to save the episode in case you want to go back to this and just do it alongside me here in this episode, because, that will be the very easiest, honestly. Now, let's talk about my projects. If you want to know, I am currently, because we're in December, this is launching or airing in December of 2024. And I am making Christmas presents. So I can't be super detailed about what I'm making, just in case somebody who is actually the recipient of one of my gifts is listening to this. I can tell you about one gift that I'm making because I'm so excited about it. It's almost done, actually. And it's by, once again, one of my favorite designers, Alexi from Two of Wands. She made this gorgeous little hood. It's in a faux cable stitch, which is so very cool because it looks like real cable, but it's not. And it's not complicated at all. It's just a couple of rows of a different pattern that you have to kind of learn or follow along. But it's 4 rows that kind of repeat over and over and over. And it creates this really gorgeous, almost like a cable pattern. And this one is a hood that you can just put over your head. You can flip it back to make it just a scarf. And then the front has some tassels as well. And it's just so adorable. I'm going to share it in the group over on Facebook, our free community. If you don't know about it yet, you're very welcome to join us over there too. You can share your projects. You can ask questions. You can answer other people's questions if you like. You can find it at theknittingmamas.com/group. Just head over there and click the link, and then you will be taken to Facebook where you can join the group. So we would love to have you over there if you aren't already in the group. And I'm definitely going to share as I'm going along inside the group, as long as I can remember if the people who are getting the gifts aren't in there. Nonetheless, I'm going to definitely do it after Christmas. And I am sharing the link to the pattern that I just described in the show notes as well, along with a coupon code that you can use if you're just getting the pattern off of her website. You will get 15% off of that purchase because you're a listener of the Knit Your Stress Away podcast. How exciting is that? Okay, and then last but not least, I did want to mention the book I'm reading. And honestly, I can't remember if I already mentioned it or not in the last Knit and Tell. I may have, because the book that I'm currently reading, I'm still waiting for the big twist that will make these 350 plus pages worth reading. I'll be very honest with you, which is not to discourage you from reading the book, but just so you know, it starts a little slow. So I'm waiting for the big wow at the end where I'm like, wow, okay, so this was it's totally making sense now why it's such a slow burn. But it's called Mother-Daughter Murder Night by an author named Nina Simon. And this was a Reese's book club pick, and I don't remember from when. I believe it was last year in the fall sometime. I've had this book for a while. I think it was even a Christmas gift from 2023. And what's the fun part is I'm reading it with my daughter and my mother-in-law together, which makes the whole thing fun. But we're all kind of like waiting for the action to start. So just take it with a grain of salt if you want to read it. If you have read it, I would love to hear what you thought of it without giving away the end, because I still have about 80 pages to go. But please come over in the Facebook group and let me know if you've read this book or not. I'm going to pop it in there so you can chime in on it. Again, Facebook group can be found at theknittingmamas.com/group. All right, my friends, this is it for today. Yes, this is everything I have to talk about today. I would love to hear from you as well. Would love to hear if you're knitting any gifts this year for friends and family. So hop on over into the group and let us know. We always are in for some inspiration as well to see what other people are doing. And if you need any help finding some simple patterns that you can make as a newbie knitter, please don't hesitate to either reach out to me on Instagram at @theknittingmamas_ or just hop over into our group and ask around there. And we have plenty of inspiration for you or suggestions that you can definitely make even in time for Christmas as a new knitter. All right, this is it for today. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I will catch you next week right here on the Knit Your Stress Away podcast. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on today's episode. I hope you're walking away with a bit more inspiration and a few ideas to make your self-care a priority. If today's chat gave you a little boost, I'd love it if you could leave a 5-star review on iTunes. This helps other moms discover the podcast and start finding more calm and creativity in their day as well. And don't forget to join us over in the Knitting Mamas community on Facebook by going to theknittingmamas.com/group. Thanks again, and remember, you deserve time for yourself to recharge and feel your best. Catch you next time on the Knit the Stress Away podcast.